Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today's card uses lots of white space. I'm using two different stamp sets by Ellen Hudson. This Mondo Poinsettias, I'm using the large poinsettia and the small one, well, the medium one. They're both pretty large. And then just the sentiment from the mistletoe and holly set. I just purchased the 48 count of the Real Brush Clean Color markers, watercolor markers, and I'm going to be giving away my 12 set, so look at my blog post for details about that. The first thing I'm going to do is take a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch Ranger watercolor paper. I'm using the Ranger paper because it is very, very white and I wanted my flowers to be white. So I'm going to adhere it to my foam mat using some surgical tape. And then I'm going to take my stamps and I'm going to arrange them. And the reason why I stuck it to the middle of that foam mat in the Misty is because I was going to have my stamps hanging over both corners. And it's easier to just put my paper right in the middle. So then I put my sentiment right between the two to balance it out. And then I'll close my lid, and that way I can stamp all three of my stamps at the same time. I'm using VersaFine Black Onyx ink, and the reason why I'm using this is because I want to emboss this image. So rather than using Versamark, which is clear sticky ink, and some black embossing powder, which sometimes you get kind of black stray embossing powder on your cardstock, I like to use the VersaFine Black, and then this is a pigment ink, so it stays wet longer and allows you to emboss. So I'll put some clear embossing powder on top of that. I did get some ink on my foam mat in Misty, so I just wiped it off with an absorber and it came right off. So I'm going to apply my clear embossing powder and then I'll heat it to set it. Now when I color this, my poinsettia is actually going to be beige, like kind of that off-white poinsettia color, and so I'm going to use this number 72 beige to apply color just in the shadow areas. I'm going to have my aqua painter by Stampin' Up. It comes in a pack of 2, and this is the thin brush. And so I'm going to take my beige and I'm going to put it in the shadow area, so it's really going to be the color of my shadow. And I'm going to draw a very thin line on one edge of the petal, and then I'll draw a thin line on the line that goes through the middle of the petal. Then I'll take my aqua painter and I'm going to kind of blend that shadowing into the white area, but I'm definitely not going to color the whole thing or pull the color out into the whole petal. So you can see I'm kind of touching that beige but not pulling it out to the edge. So it's really important that you leave a lot of white space within each of these petals, because otherwise your poinsettia is going to look kind of brownish, and you want there to be white highlights, like stark white highlights. So you can see I kind of start almost at the edge of the white and work my way to the color, and then sort of stop at the color and just blend it a little bit so I don't get a harsh line. But other than that, I'm leaving a lot of white space on each of the petals, and I'm going to do these petals one at a time, and it just makes it a little bit more manageable. And I'm not worrying too much about having dark colors at the center of the flower like at the base. I'm just making sure that I apply just a tad of color just to give it some shadowing, but other than that I'm not really doing very much. These markers blend really well, so they're really easy to use. If you don't have these markers and you want to do something similar, I would recommend using some distress markers. Those are also really easy to blend, or some Inktense pencils. I know the antique linen, I think, would be the color that I would try. And either way, you're going to get a nice watercolor look as long as you leave that white highlight area. So I'm going to go ahead and finish all these petals and I'll be back. Alright, now that I have my petals done, I'm going to take this wine red color, and the tip of these markers is really, really fine. So I'm just going to color each of these. Now I'm not going to watercolor them, I'm just going to sort of take the marker and color them, not worrying about shading or anything. I just wanted to get some nice color in the center here. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to grab a green, so it's called pale green actually. And you know how sometimes you can see the green inside the veins of these flower petals in a poinsettia? I'm just going to barely kind of color here and there, maybe 1 or 2 stripes on each of the petals. And it's just supposed to give just a faint tint of green, but not much more than that because you don't want too much color. I'm actually focusing on putting it on top of the beige because I found that that's easier. You can see here I put a little bit too much in the white area, so to remove it I just added a little bit of water with my aqua painter and then I pulled it up with a tissue. It was really easy to do. But I think that if you stay on top of the shadow areas that you color in with the beige, then you get that tint rather than the bright green color. Alright, next step is to add some shimmer. Now I didn't want to cover the whole entire petal with this Wink of Stella clear pen. I just wanted there to be a hint of shimmer because I didn't want it to be overwhelming. So basically I just colored all my shadow areas, so the center line and then the one edge that I used as my shadow, and I just did a stripe of Wink of Stella pen on each one of those. And it really gives a nice subtle effect, so it's not really an in-your-face glitter, it's just a very subtle shine. So I'm going to do all these petals, and then I actually have a red Wink of Stella pen. I hardly ever use it because I tend to usually use the clear. And the nice thing about the clear on top of these white petals is that it kind of gives a little bit of a gold touch to it, and so it kind of adds to the dark beige that I put in for the shadow area. So here's my red Wink of Stella, and it's nice to add it on top of a red that's already there so it sort of blends in, because the red I think that comes out of this Wink of Stella is very, very dark, but when you put it on top of a red it just adds a really nice shine, and it doesn't mute the red color at all, which is what I like about using that versus the clear. Okay, so now you can sort of see I'm holding it up. I don't know if you can really tell in the video, but I'm going to post some photos so you can get a close-up look of how this shimmer is and how pretty it is. So I've cut this 1/4 of an inch of black cardstock, and I'm going to use my two-way glue pen. Now I had cut my watercolor piece to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so I'm just going to place this strip on top so I don't have to trim it out and then put this strip on my card base next to it. If I just put it right on top, it's much easier to get everything lined up. So once I put my strip on, I'm going to use my ATG and just put it on the back of my watercolor panel, and then I'll adhere it to my card base, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I think this is a pretty repeatable card that you can do if you want it. I think it looks really nice and elegant. Now I had a little bit of that excess base on the right, so I took my big Stampin' Up! Scissors and trimmed it off. And that is the card for today. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.